Hey folks, Bill here. Every year about this time I get the same question, and I think I got it a dozen times just last week. It goes like this. Bill, my tomato plants look healthy. They're green, they're big, the leaves look fine, but I'm hardly getting any tomatoes off them. What am I doing wrong? And I'll tell you what I tell them. You're probably not doing much wrong at all. Because here's what most folks do when the tomatoes don't come. They start looking at the plant. Maybe I bought a bad variety. Maybe I ought to prune it different. Maybe I need to go buy some fertilizer and pour it on. But 9 times out of 10, the plant isn't your problem. The problem's underneath it. It's the ground. Now, before I go any further, come over here with me a second. I want you to see something. These 2 beds went in the very same day. Same variety, same seed, same soil, same water, same amount of sun on them. I set them up that way on purpose so there'd be no arguing about it later. The only difference between them is this side here has been getting a gallon of what I'm about to show you how to make every 3 weeks since May. That side over there hasn't had a drop of it. Now, I'm not going to oversell you. That is not twice the plant. Anybody tells you they doubled their tomatoes with a jug of something, hold on to your wallet. But look at the fruit set on this one against that one. And this side's been running about 2 weeks ahead the whole season. That's what we're talking about today. Not a miracle, just a real difference for about $1. Now, I'm not about to tell you to go dig up your garden and start over. Nobody's doing that in the middle of the season, and you shouldn't have to. What I'm going to show you today is the simplest thing I know to wake that ground back up. It costs about $1, takes you 5 minutes. So here's how we'll go. First, I want to spend a couple of minutes on why the soil is the thing. And I'll keep it plain, no chemistry class, I promise you that. Once you've got that, everything else makes sense. Then I'll mix you up a batch of what I use, right here on this bench, start to finish, so you can see exactly what goes in it. Then I'll show you how to put it on your plants without doing them any harm, because that part trips people up more than the mixing does. And at the end, I'll tell you honestly what to expect from it. I'll also tell you the handful of free things that'll do more for your tomatoes than any jug of anything. Sound all right? Let's get into it. All right, couple of minutes on the ground, then we'll go make something. Here's the part that took me a long while to get through my head. Your tomato plant does not eat dirt. I know that sounds obvious said out loud, but think about what it actually means. You can have soil absolutely full of everything that plant needs, and the plant can still go hungry. Because most of what's down there is locked up. It's sitting in a form those roots simply cannot take in. So what unlocks it? Life. Little bitty life. Bacteria, fungus, billions of them in every handful of good dirt living down there in the dark doing the work. They break that locked up stuff down and turn it into a form the roots can pull in. That's their whole job. So your plant isn't really feeding off your soil. It's feeding off what that crew hands up to it. I call them the crew. You'll hear me say it the rest of this video. Now, here's why your plants stall out come midsummer. That crew runs on energy, same as you and me. Their energy comes from carbon, sugars in plain terms. And by the middle of summer, in a bed that's been growing hard all season, that's run low. So the crew goes quiet. They're still down there, they're just not working much. And when the crew goes quiet, your plant quits getting fed. But here's the thing, it doesn't wilt on you. It doesn't go yellow. It doesn't do anything that looks like a problem. It just coasts. Big, green, healthy-looking plant and hardly any fruit, which is exactly what those folks were asking me about. So the fix isn't to feed the plant. Pouring more fertilizer on a plant whose crew has gone quiet is like stocking the pantry when nobody's in the kitchen. The fix is to feed the crew. And that's all this stuff I'm about to make is. It is a meal for the life in your soil. That's it. That's the whole idea. And if you take nothing else from today, take that one. Because you now understand more about growing than half the folks standing in line at the garden center. So let's go feed them. 3 things. That's the whole list. First one's water. 1 gallon. And this is the part everybody skips right past, so give me a second on it. Try not to use straight tap water if you can help it. City water's got chlorine in it, and chlorine is in there for exactly one reason, to kill microbes. And microbes are the entire point of what we're doing. You'd be undoing the job before you started. Rainwater off the roof is perfect if you catch it. Well water's fine. And if city tap is all you've got, that's no problem either. Just fill a bucket and set it outside uncovered overnight. That chlorine gases off on its own. Cost you nothing but a little patience. Second thing is molasses, 2 tablespoons. Blackstrap if your store carries it, but any molasses will do the work. And third is yeast, just plain baker's yeast. That little jar in the baking aisle, couple of dollars, lasts you all season in the icebox. 1 tablespoon. That's it. Water, molasses, yeast. About $1 worth for a whole gallon. Now let's mix it up. Start with your water and get it warm. Not hot, warm. About 95 degrees, which is right about bath water. And if you haven't got a thermometer, don't go buying one. Stick your finger in it. If it's comfortable on your hand, you're right where you need to be. Too hot and you'll kill that yeast before it ever gets going. And then all you've made is sweet water. In goes your 2 tablespoons of molasses. Stir that till it's gone. Really gone. No dark streaks sitting down in the bottom. Then the yeast, 1 tablespoon. And here's the only trick in the whole business. Sprinkle it across the top and then leave it be. Don't stir it in. Let it sit up there on the surface where it can get at that warm sugar water. Now cover it up. And I mean cover it, not seal it. A dish towel, a piece of cloth, whatever's handy. Do not screw a lid down tight on this one. I had a jar crack on me doing exactly that. All that yeast makes gas, and the gas has got to have somewhere to go. Set it out of the sun and leave it overnight. 8 hours, 12 hours, doesn't have to be exact. And in the morning you'll have this. See that foam sitting on top? That's how you know it took. That's your crew, awake and fed and ready to go to work. Use it up inside about 2 days. After that, the sugar's all eaten and it starts turning on you. You'll smell it before you see it. Now let me tell you what those 2 things are actually doing down there. Because once you know, you'll know when it's worth making and when it isn't. The molasses is the meal. That's the sugar we talked about. The energy your crew's been running short on. You pour it on, they wake up, they multiply, and they get straight back to breaking down what's already in your ground. And I want to say that part again, because it's the thing folks get backwards. That sugar is not for your tomato. Your tomato can't drink sugar up through its roots. It doesn't work that way. The sugar is for the soil. The yeast is doing something a bit different. Now that foam it makes overnight, that's just yeast eating sugar and burping out gas. Same thing that makes a loaf of bread rise. It's a good sign. It tells you your yeast was alive and it did its job. But that yeast is not going to move out into your garden and set up house. Baker's yeast is a kitchen animal. It lives in bread dough. Out in your soil, it's well out of its depth, and the locals will run it off inside a couple of days. So what's it good for then? It's food. Plain and simple, that's the honest answer. All those little yeast bodies break right down and feed the same crew. There's nitrogen in there, some vitamins, good stuff. It's a quick meal on top of the slow one, which is why 1 tablespoon does the job just fine. 4 tablespoons doesn't do 4 times as much. It just makes a mess and pops the lid off your jar. Stick with the 1. Now, if you've come across this recipe online anywhere, you've likely seen 2 more things in it: buttermilk and baking soda. And folks ask me about those every single spring, so let me be straight with you on both. Buttermilk's in there for calcium. And the thinking is that calcium stops blossom end rot. You know the one, that brown sunken spot on the bottom of the tomato that ruins the whole fruit right when it's about to ripen. Here's what I wish somebody had sat me down and told me 20 years back, because I chased this one a long time. Blossom end rot usually isn't a calcium shortage in your ground. Most soil in this country has got plenty of calcium in it already. It's a plumbing problem. Calcium rides up into that plant along with the water, and it goes where the water's moving fastest, out through the leaves, not down into the fruit. So when your watering swings around, bone dry Monday and soaked on Thursday, that calcium doesn't reach the bottom of the tomato in time. Those cells give out, and that's your brown spot. You can pour calcium on that ground all summer and never touch it, because calcium was never what you were short of. Water steady, get some mulch down, and it goes away on its own. That's the fix, and it's free. So buttermilk isn't hurting a thing. It's a little more food for the crew, same as the yeast. If you've got some going sour in the icebox, throw it in. I just wouldn't go out and buy it for this. Now, baking soda. That one I do leave out, every time. Two reasons folks put it in: to change the soil pH or to fight fungus. On the pH, a tablespoon in a gallon of water isn't going to move your soil in any way that lasts. If your ground's genuinely too sour, that's a garden lime job. You do it off an actual soil test and it works over months, not over one watering. On the fungus, there is a baking soda type product that works on mildew, that's true, but it's a different one, and you spray it up on the leaves, not pour it down on the ground. And here's my real reason. Baking soda is sodium, salt basically. Your plants don't use it and it doesn't wash out quick, it just sits and builds up. And salt breaks down the structure of your soil. That nice crumbly dirt you've been working on goes tight and slick, and then water won't soak in and roots can't breathe. Which is the exact opposite of everything we just spent 10 minutes trying to do. 1 tablespoon one time won't wreck anything, and I want to be fair about that. But there's nothing to gain from it, so I leave it out and I don't miss it. Alright, let's go put this on some plants. 3 things to get right, and none of them are hard. First, water your bed before you pour this on. I know that sounds backwards. Here's why. Dry ground doesn't soak things up, it sheds them. You've seen it happen. You pour water on a bed that's dried out and it runs straight down the cracks and out the bottom, right past every root you were aiming for. Wet that ground first and it'll take this in nice and even. Second, put it on the soil, not on the plant. Not the leaves and not right up against the stem. Go out about 6 inches from that stem and pour it around in a ring. That's where the feeding roots are anyway. They're not sitting under the trunk, they're out away from it. And there's another reason. Sugar water sitting against a wet stem in the middle of July is asking for rot right there at the soil line. Don't give it the chance. Third, every 2 or 3 weeks. That's plenty. And I know the temptation. If a little's good, more's better. Not here. That crew needs time to work through what you already gave them. Keep dumping sugar on top and they'll bloom right up and tie your nitrogen up instead of turning it loose. And then you're back to a big leafy plant with no tomatoes on it, which is exactly where we came in. Morning or evening if you can manage it. Not the middle of the day when everything out there is already hot and stressed. Now, what should you actually expect out of this? I'm going to level with you here, because I'd a whole lot rather you trust me than be impressed by me. You are not going to walk out one morning and find a plant 3 times the size of your neighbor's. I've seen those side-by-side pictures, same as you have, and I'll tell you what's usually going on in them. One of those plants is in a sunnier spot, or better dirt, or a bigger pot. That's not the feed doing that. That's the real estate. Now think back to those 2 beds I showed you at the start. Same everything, one variable changed. That's the only kind of comparison worth a thing, and it's the reason I set them up that way. So I'd know, and so you'd know. And what that bed gives me is real, but it's honest-sized. More fruit set. A couple of weeks ahead. Better color on the leaves. A couple of weeks after I put it down, my plants green up quicker and they hold better through a hot spell. The ground works easier under the fork. It smells right. And over a season, on beds I keep doing this to, I get more off them. That's a real thing. It's just not a miracle. And it doesn't last forever, which is why I do it every few weeks through the season instead of once and forgetting about it. And look, if you want the big result, the one your neighbor actually notices over the fence, I'd be doing you a disservice not to tell you it's the boring stuff. 4 things. Get a soil test. Your county extension office will do one cheap, and then you know what you're actually working with instead of guessing at it. 2 inches of good compost on your beds every year. That's the single biggest thing on this list, and it isn't close. Mulch. Straw, leaves, whatever you've got. It holds your water even. And remember, even water is what fixes your blossom end rot too. And water on a schedule. Same days. Deep. Not whenever you happen to think of it. You do those 4 things, and this little gallon of feed sits right on top of them and does its work. Skip them, and there's no jug of anything on earth that's going to save you. All right, folks. Go mix yourself up a batch, put it on a couple of plants, and see what you think of it. Try it on 2 and leave 2 alone if you want. That's the best way to learn anything in a garden anyhow. I'll see you next time.